So I also have the great pleasure this morning of introducing our guest pastor, our guest preacher this morning. I'm going to invite Pastor Kevin Thomas to come on up and join me. He'll be bringing us the Word of God this morning as we reflect a little bit more on Psalm 23. So let's give him a great warm salute welcome. Good morning.
Well, good morning. I'm Kevin. And maybe just so you know a little bit about me, I served as a pastor of a few churches here in the northern suburbs for about 28 years. And the last 5 years, I work for Young Life, the youth outreach organization, helping get Young Life started where it doesn't currently exist. So that's kind of a little bit my background. Hannah, I have to say, is amazing. Gerard was scaring me. He just kept staring and staring and staring, and Hannah had him tamed, and a lot of other people tamed too. So anyway, thank you, Hannah, for the introduction. So as I work in Young Life and I travel around the state of Minnesota, I have this impression of adults. And my impression of adults is adults are usually super, super busy. But even though they're super busy, I find most adults are bored. Like eating, sleeping, going to work, running errands, watching Netflix specials. It's not that exciting. And the daily grind feels really quite overwhelming most days. We're doing the same thing every day, every day, every day. There's not really, life doesn't really seem to have that great sense of adventure many times. So just for my gift to you this morning, what I've done over the last couple weeks is just done a little research. And I found out what it's going to cost us to get a trek up Mount Everest and maybe back, but we can at least get to the top of Everest, okay? So on the screen, you're gonna see the costs that are associated with taking a trek up Mount Everest, and if you run all the calculations, you're gonna notice that it's about $54,400 to get everything we need to take a trek up the top of Everest, and again, maybe you make it down or not. Now, I'm feeling like we can do better than this, so let's knock off $400. And you can meet me in the back with your checkbooks. So for only $45,000, that's it. What a bargain today, just for you. You and I can take a trek up Everest. Now, if you want your own private tour, it's gonna cost you $65,000 more, which puts this thing over like $110,000, which you can do. So anyway, you can just get out your checkbook right now, write it to the Kevin Thomas Vacation Fund, and I'll be in the back, and you can just start writing the checks with all those zeros, and we can have quite the adventure. Amen? Lunchtime? Let's go. Some of you seem a little apprehensive. I mean, you're nodding, but you're really not nodding. Because when you get a guest speaker, you have to nod, right? Like, oh, make him feel good. Because, he doesn't feel comfortable with us yet. So anyway, so a trek up Everest might not be in the cards for all of us. In fact, only 7,000 people have made it up there and back, and some haven't made it back. That's not a joke, but that's just the truth. And so where do we in our everyday lives find a sense of adventure? Where do we get past the boredom of doing the same things over and over again and feeling like I'm just on the hamster wheel every single day doing the same things? And I think Psalm 23 is quite actually a really amazing kind of adventure guide. The psalmist here offers us a perspective of the different places we can go and experiences we can have, and people will meet along the way that take our sometimes mundane lives and turn them into something of an adventure. And Hannah got us started super well. You're probably familiar with it, but it starts with, the Lord is my shepherd. I have everything I need, or I lack nothing. And as you might know, sheep by nature are incredibly valuable, but they're also incredibly vulnerable. Like there's all sorts of predators out there that can take out sheep. It can be wolves or bears or any other wild animal. Sheep can get into tainted water or tainted food sources, which make them sick. There were sheep thieves that steal sheep. Remember the Looney Tunes cartoon where they steal sheep? And of course, like the terrain can be treacherous. So sheep aren't that ambulatory, so they can get stuck in a ravine somewhere. Yeah, I used ambulatory. I was just thinking, that's a good word, isn't it? Sorry. So sheep can get stuck in a ravine somewhere and injure themselves. And so they need a shepherd, they need a guide, they need a protector who's smart and alert and experienced and tough and courageous and caring. And that's where the psalmist starts. Like, the Lord is my shepherd. I have a God of the universe who cares about me. And we don't like to think of ourselves as vulnerable, but I think we have to admit that we are. We're incredibly valuable to God, but let's be honest about it. Life is cruel. The world is a hard place. And you can look anywhere you want to see the truth of that, right? You can see war-torn areas where people's lives are in the balance every single day. You can see people that don't have enough basic necessities to live a decent life. There's bad water in places. There is people that must come from homes and backgrounds that were really rough and difficult. And then just for us who feel like, oh, I'm kind of doing okay, we have to recognize that things are trying to ravage our soul all the time. It could be loneliness. It could be anxiety. It could be depression. It could be self-pity. It could be anger. It could be resentment. It could be envy. It could be a sense of, I'm more important than everyone else around me. So all these things are coming at us, trying to ravage our souls, and we, just like the sheep, need a shepherd who's smart and alert and compassionate and skilled and experienced. And that's where the psalmist begins our journey, with looking to a shepherd, a guide, a protector who's going to walk us through all the different experiences of our lives. Where does it start? He leads me, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. There's some members of our family that own a place up by Rush Lake. And just last weekend, I was up there, kind of before everyone else got up there, and took the paddleboard out. And it was before most of the boats were on the lake or anyone else out there. I just kind of floated out in the paddleboard in the middle of the lake and just kind of plunked down there. And I thought, this is kind of cool, right? No cell phone. No one saying, what's for lunch? No one saying, what's that light flashing on the dashboard of the car that I'm supposed to deal with or not? No one at work saying, and how do I get access to that website you said I could get access to? None of that. Just me, some still water, a sense where all is calm, it's peaceful, and it restores my soul. We know that where this psalm is headed, it's going to get rough. But I think before we start in the journey, we ought to start thinking about, where is the place your soul gets restored? Where is your green pasture? Quiet waters? Where is a place where you can sense God's presence upon you, restoring your soul? And it doesn't happen quickly, and I personally don't believe it happens when you're in the middle of activity or noise. It's, where do you go to get your soul restored? Because the pathway forward, I'm going to be candid with you, it's not going to be easy. The next part of it is, and he guides me, leads me on paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Meaning, it's not just about hanging out around green pastures and still waters. We're going somewhere. We're going on paths of righteousness. Paths of righteousness would mean we're somehow carrying God's love and grace and goodness into the world around us. We're going on paths of righteousness. And look at it here, for his name's sake, right? It's easy to think, well, I'm going on a path of righteousness because it's really going to make me feel good about myself. Or we're going on a path of righteousness because then I can feel morally superior to other people. Or because then it's going to make me happy. No, it does say, he leads me on paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And this is crazy. Somehow, we are carrying God's reputation. His name's sake is carrying God's reputation. Somehow we're supposed to carry God's reputation with us where we go. Like, in some way, God's reputation is dependent upon how we walk these paths of righteousness, which is really a crazy responsibility that God gives to those people that he shepherds. And when we're on these paths of righteousness, there will be times where it doesn't go like we thought, or God's going to ask us to go in a place we didn't expect. Some of us, I know, were not born in the 1900s like I was, but there was this tennis player. His name is John McEnroe. John McEnroe was an epic tennis player in the 1980s. I know some of you are like, wow, 1980s, are you kidding me? But the good news about tennis is basically the same. You hit a ball with a racket, so it's not that much. But McEnroe was famous for being really good and really volatile. And when he got a call that didn't go his way, he had this famous quote of, "You cannot be serious." But he did it a lot more dramatically than I did it there. And as we're going on these paths of righteousness with God, there are times you're going to turn to God, your shepherd, and saying, "You cannot be serious. You cannot be asking me to go there. You cannot be asking me to go there. You cannot be asking me to hang out with that person and show your love and grace to that person, because I frankly do not like them." But the paths of righteousness is all part of the adventure. Following God to places and to people we never expected to be going to, or being around or experiencing, saying, "I'm somehow carrying God's love and righteousness and goodness and grace with me on paths of righteousness for the sake of God's reputation." And now the next part gets even a little more rough, that we end up ourselves in the valley of the dark shadow or the shadow of death. "I will not fear, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me." In the pathway, in the journey, in the adventure of this thing we call life and faith, we're all going to find ourselves in a place we absolutely do not want to be, and it feels dark, and we feel alone, and we feel abandoned. And there's always times in life where no matter how much you believe in your head in the goodness of God, you are not seeing it. You feel darkness, you feel, it could be from within, where we're feeling horrible. It could be from without. It's usually both. I'm not a Hebrew scholar, so I couldn't count the words in the Hebrew, the original, but I can count words in the English version of the Lord's, the 23rd Psalm. It's 108 words, and right in the middle, which if my math is right is 54, word 54, it puts us right in the middle of the phrase, "You are with me." And pay attention to the psalm, because we're waiting for the ending at the end. Usually they structure it so it gets right to the heart of it, right in the middle of the psalm. "You are with me." And notice the switch here between the pronouns. He leads me, he guides me, paths of righteousness, green pastures, still waters, and then it gets to "you are with me." Something happened in the dark valley. Something we maybe didn't expect. Quite frankly, something we weren't even anticipating was that in the dark valley, in that place you don't want to be, God's presence begins to emerge in a way you've never seen before. And God goes from a distant "he" up there somewhere to "you. You are with me." We're walking through this side by side. I love the quote, I'm not going to do it right, in the Lord of the Rings. And no, I didn't read Tolkien's great work. I just watched the movies, so don't get impressed. But it's at a very dark moment where Frodo is carrying the ring and his friend Sam, and Frodo thinks it's all over, let's just give up. And Sam, his friend, turns to Frodo and says, "It's in all the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the stories that really mattered, full of dangers and darkness they were. The only way to have a real story, the only way to have a real adventure, is to at some point in our lives find ourselves in a place we don't want to be. Because the great stories always have a few chapters where you think all is lost and nothing is going to go the right way, that there is no future. And somehow in those chapters of our lives that are dark and difficult and overwhelming, there's a sense of this emerging hope that there's a God who's actually just slowly, sometimes painfully, walking with me through the valley of the shadow of death. It's a place we don't want to be, but it's a place we're going to end up. Now the question becomes, okay, if we're going to ever get out of this dark valley, which by God's grace we do, what happens next? The next phrase is, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies, Think for a moment. I know it's getting closer and closer to lunchtime, and this is really mean, but think about your favorite meal. And I know I won't get your attention back the rest of the time, but that's okay. Enjoy the daydream. Think about your favorite meal. Ribs, ribeye steak, medium rare, baked potato, sour cream butter, roasted broccoli, Maybe it's sushi or something more exotic that I can't think of right now. But like, just for a moment, think of your favorite meal. Think a person you trust making the food has prepared it for you, and you're sitting at the table ready to enjoy your favorite meal. And as you're preparing for eating your favorite meal, in walks in the door 3 people, and let's be honest, if you thought you were going to enter hell, these are the first three people you would meet. Like people that just disgust you. People you just can't figure out a way to like. People that have been a problem for you. Now, if you're about to eat your favorite meal and these people walk in, did your sense of how well you're going to digest this food just change? Pretty dramatically. And somehow, and I don't quite get it, out of the dark valley, out of learning that God's not just a figure out there, but he's a personal shepherd walking beside me, comes this amazing ability to enjoy the goodness of God. The table is presented before me in the presence of my enemies. Somehow, we gain an ability to be around people and circumstances that we don't really think are right or good, but yet we can still experience and sense God's goodness and grace and even healing in the midst of it. You prepare a table before me, everything good, in the presence of my enemies. And this is where we start finally coming to terms with ourselves and God, where we finally come to terms with the fact of life ain't gonna be perfect. It's not gonna fit together the way we dream it would. Some of us aren't working on plan B, we're working on plan double Q right now of what life was supposed to be. And the peace that God gives is a peace to go in a valley, in a place where you didn't expect, where life is not perfect, but you are still somehow, by God's grace, finding a way to enjoy God's goodness and his peace and his love and his grace in the midst of, you prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Now, in that table, in that banquet, in that great meal God's providing for us, where are we sitting at the table? You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. This is the VIP seat at the banquet. If you had a king or a royalty show up to your banquet, you would anoint their head, biblical times, anoint their head with oil and make sure their cup is filled the whole time. There's someone watching that VIP the whole time, making sure they have everything they need. So at God's great banquet, at God's great table, guess who's the VIP? Well, it's you and me. I've worked in ministry, close to 30 years now. Along the way, I've met some absolutely exceptional people. People of incredible faith, people of incredible integrity, people who are so sincere and so full of faith. I've met all sorts of people like that. And after 30 years of this, I've come to a really enlightening conclusion. I am not one of them. I am juvenile. I am incredibly sarcastic, and I struggle with doubt every single day. I meet other people that really are sincere and gracious, but I just can't muster it up. If you got to know me, you would say, you're kind of a 12-year-old, aren't you, Kev? And then if you really got to know me, you go, no, you're a 4th grader. And I've struggled with this because I've always felt like God looked at certain people and went, yeah, I like that person. Yeah, look at them. Look at what she's doing. And God has all these people and God looks at me and goes, he's all right. And I finally come to the conclusion of, that's not God. It's just what I made up in my mind of how I think God thinks about me. God, not only, this is a crazy thought, not only does God absolutely love me, I think God likes me. I think when I'm a junior higher and act like one, God giggles at my jokes. I think when I'm sarcastic, God says, that needed to be said. Someone had to say it, Kev, so I'm glad you did it. When I'm full of doubt, God says, that's a really good question, and you need other people to keep processing those questions. So going from I'm kind of a B player in God's kingdom to I am fully loved and really liked by God has been a huge step for me to enjoy all the goodness that God has for us. And that goes for you as well. And it's easy to say. God likes you. God likes your quirkiness. God likes your weirdness. God likes it when you're being a butt. Sorry, I shouldn't use that word in church. So God likes you as well as loves you. You anoint my head with oil. my cup overflows. Surely in goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. I've my perspective in going through life. In the windshield, when I'm driving forward, it's all sleet and fog and mud. When I'm looking forward in my life to the future, I can't make it fit together. It all looks jumbled, it all looks confusing, it all looks foggy. The only way I really see God's goodness and mercy is looking in the rearview mirror of what's behind me. Because as I look in the rearview mirror, I see all these times where I was doing what I thought I was supposed to do, but God was actually taking everything I was doing and bringing his love and his mercy and his goodness into my life. You know, probably about 40 years ago, I made a commitment to be a follower of Jesus, and at that time, I was silly enough to say, I am going to do this the right way. And every day has been another discovery of, I'll never do this the right way. I can't. I'm not capable of following Jesus the right way. I'm capable of trying to move forward, but what God does with my limited abilities and limited capacity is he is bringing his love and mercy. I thought I was following Jesus. What I've learned is he's following me, taking care of all this stuff behind me, piecing together my story, making something meaningful of it, so I can move forward with a little more confidence that even though what's in front of me is foggy, that what God is doing with it was pretty amazing. Surely your goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and finally I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. No matter where your adventures are taking you, no matter whether you're feeling green valleys and still waters or the dark valley of dark shadows, we all absolutely need a place to come home. We all need some place we come back to going, this is where it's safe. This is where I'm comfortable. This is where I feel fully accepted, fully loved. And what God is trying to provide for us as we go through all these adventures is a place we come back to that's called home. And I believe the church, at its best, is just a bunch of people going on their next adventure with God, for God, around God, and coming back home every once in a while to talk about their adventures. And some of us come back to talk about what amazing things we saw. Some of us come back to saying, I didn't see God anywhere. I feel alone. I feel lost. But we have a group of people to come back to talk about where we're at in these things, this adventure we call life, faith. So God takes us on this amazing adventure. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be comfortable. There'll be beautiful moments, but it gets difficult and dark along the way. But remember, you are with me is the key phrase here. Somehow, no matter where we go, we have a God who loves us deeply, likes us a heck of a lot, and wants to walk through every moment with us. So, what do we do with all this? I mean, you could write checks to me for $45,000, and I can try to find a way to get you Everest, but don't do it because I'm the worst administrator I know, so I will mess up the whole thing. So you can go on any adventure you want, and if you want to go up Mount Everest, that's great. Just recognize when you get a picture at the top, you have a hat on, goggles, and you're breathing through an oxygen mask, and Will won't be able to know it's actually you, but that's okay. You can go on that adventure. It's great. But I think we can choose to look at each day as an adventure, as God taking us places we didn't expect to go, as experiencing things, maybe we wanted them, maybe we didn't, but we have a place to call home, which is God's presence each and every day of our lives and each and every day of eternity, that we can be secure and safe and know that we're deeply cared for. Allow me to pray for you. Jesus, you call yourself the good shepherd, the great shepherd, the amazing shepherd, the smart shepherd, the gifted shepherd, the really paying close attention shepherd, the compassionate, I care for you, I won't give up on you no matter what shepherd. So I just pray for each of us here. We come in and we leave all at different places. Some of us feel this amazing sense of gratitude. Some of us are in a place that we wish we just weren't there. Some of us are somewhere in between, kind of confused about what's next, but may we never forget. You love us so deeply. You care for us so much, and you are with us. No matter who I am, no matter what I do, no matter where I go, you are there. So thank you for being that shepherd we can always lean on. And we find joy in the midst of everything because of your presence with us. It's in your name and for your sake and your kingdom, Jesus, we pray. Amen.